Працюємо із Світланою Шимко. Будемо говорити з вами про драматургію. І Світлана розкаже про те, як працювати з історією і зі стилем в документальному фільмі. Фільм «Ленінопад» був відзначений спеціальним призом на міжнародному фестивалі Docudays. Світлана співпрацювала з Guardians, а сьогодні любо ділитиметься своїм досвідом з вами. Так? Дякуємо, Світлано, так? І бажаю гарного дня робочого.
Good morning, everyone. I will speak English so that we all understand each other. And please let me know if I speak too fast or not clear enough or something else, okay? And also, at any moment you can ask questions. And today it will be more practical day because I'm a more practitioner than a theoretician, so to say. And we will watch a lot of films of different styles. We will also watch my films and we will try to analyze them. So first of all, I would like to tell a couple words about myself because I think none of you really know me. Just we got to know each other a bit yesterday. So I have a background in IT. I'm a programmer, and this was my first education in the university, and I think it quite shaped my brain in a way that I like things structured. So I really get lost when people try to talk about abstract things and try, theorize on a very top level. I like very basic life and understandable things. Then, as many of you here, I also had experience in journalism. I studied in a school of journalism in Kiev. And there I had my first experience with documentary films. And as you have something like this here, it was also kind of journalistic film style. You have an expert that talks from one position, you have another expert which talks from another point of view, and you sort of stay in the middle, you are neutral, and you are trying to describe the problem as a whole. And this is how I started to make films, and I realized that it's not, as I think now, not the best way. Because it's very important to also show yourself, to also show your point of view, and to make people more live, not just put them behind the big important table and to have this distance, you and the expert. I worked on Channel 5. It's a news channel in Ukraine as an international news journalism, and there it was very a bit difficult for me in the terms that when you work as a journalist, you have very strict deadlines. You have one day, you have 5 minutes to do something, and you have this flow of all information which is coming from Reuters, different France press, different kind of press agencies, and you have the text that they already made, and you have to make from the 5 minutes of video, you have to make 30 seconds, and from 2 pages of text, you have to make 3 paragraphs. That's all. That's how the life of journalist is when it's a very fast pace. And while I was working, I realized that this kind of limits my interest and limits my abilities, and I wanted to try to dedicate more time to a specific project, more time to specific people, and I decided to study documentary films. I went to a film school. It's called DocNomads. Maybe some of you heard about it, maybe not. It's a 2-year master program which takes place in different countries, every semester in every country, and we got to learn different documentary traditions in different countries. It was Portugal, Hungary, and Brussels. And we also got to understand how different political and economic context shapes the way people make films. For example, Hungary is very similar to Ukraine in terms of history. They also had the Soviet years and similar problems. So it's a lot of stories are character driven, and like they have really hard drama. And like in general, Hungarian cinema is very depressing, I would say. In Portugal, they have another situation because it's a story of colonization, migration. So this is like their main focus in films. And in Brussels, I am oversimplifying, but in Brussels they have no problems. You know, everything is good, life is well, everything works on time. So their main focus is the style. So they use a lot of, you know, they work, they make documentary films on film, on like 35 or 16 millimeter film. They do like, they take the film and they do the scratching, the itching, you know, they paint on film, they work with the sound. Sound is all, you know. And I realized that this comes from this like focus on style comes the lack of the story itself. You know, you try to make it look beautiful, although there is maybe the story is sort of not so important. This experience really broadened my horizons, and I started to see how different and how interesting documentary film can be. So first of all, as yesterday I was sort of, you know, the expert for your films or advisor, today we will change the roles. So I will show you, I will torture you with my films, and you will be in the position of an expert. We will try to analyze the film. And so that it's a bit easier for you, I set up several points. So try to remember, it's easy, but just something that will guide you. So when you watch the film, please look or think how the film is structured, what is the narrative approach, what is the style, what is the relation with the protagonist, if there is a protagonist, and try to think and try to answer the question how the film was made. And then, because I know how the film was made, we will compare the answers. So we will start with the films. I can show you 3 or 4 films, depending on how hard for you it will be to watch them. But we will start with the 3 films. They are short, though. And one thing I wanted to say that I chose these films intentionally because they are very different in their style, in their approach, so that you see how different it can be.
Я взагалі не могла уявити своє. Я просто їхала заробити грошей, щоб вижили мої діти. Про себе я і не думала. І я не мала уявлення, яка тут робота. Я думала, що набагато легше. Тут є океан. Скаже, тобі так добре. Ти бачиш океан. Але він не мій. Це так само, як апельсин, він не мій. Мій червоний буряк. Коли я його з'їм, то я маю користь від нього. Апельсини, португальці і добре.
Тихо. Тихо. Все, сидіть.
У вас чоловік тягне.
У мене нема чоловіка.
Що ви так пхаєте
Ну,
волку в тіло?
так, ото волк називається.
Моксицилін плюс проболонове. Я вам скажу, що такі канал наш тільки офіційний.
Поняла. Все. Делаем пробу. Все, ставим ногу и ждем.
Так, що у вас ідеально?
Это прикорневая пневмония.
Называем дух Владимира Ильича. Называем дух Владимира Ильича Ленина. Здравствуйте, Владимир Ильич. Здравствуйте. Простите, пожалуйста, я хочу уточнить, это к нам пришел дух Владимира Ильича? Да. Вы можете с нами сейчас поговорить?
Okay, so I'm waiting for your comments, your analysis based on these approximate questions, topics. Or maybe you have questions to me, like tell me how the films are different, yes. Да, я потім.
Як спостерігати за людиною так, щоб вона не почувалася дискомфортно перед камерою і забула, що ви взагалі є?
коли у вас 3 дні на зйомки, я про це уточняю.
Ще раз?
Не коли ти можеш півроку спостерігати, що вона до тебе звикла, а коли у вас 3 дні на зйомки. When you have 3 days to film.
The question from Darko
Because-
was that there was really many hard words, the hero said. So how to make hero
How to observe.
such moments?
It requires time. And within 3 days, you have to think. Actually, I have one film which was made in 3 days. I was thinking to show you it or not. Maybe, if you want, I can show you. It's 9 minutes only. It's a bit different, although it doesn't have a character. It's like you need to find a way to go out from these limitations. But indeed, to establish a trustful relations with the character, it requires time. There are some people, maybe for whom, who maybe they didn't talk about some very important story in their life, and sometimes you come and they are open, like they open up, and they are really happy to share their stories. And sometimes it also relates to people who survived very difficult dramatic situations in their life. For example, in the second part, after the break, we will watch a film by Sergei Bukovsky, Spell Your Name. And there he uses archives made by the Shaw Foundation. Maybe you know, it started by Steven Spielberg. He had this initiative that the interviewers would go to people who survived Holocaust, who survived the Second World War, and they were interviewing them. And you see sometimes like it's maybe it was a taboo, like a topic maybe some people didn't really want to talk about it, or maybe they never had the chance to say, and you will see that some interviews are really fantastic, although it was just happened like this, but of course you cannot to observe and to make some kind of observation film, it requires a lot of time, but at least you can, if you can get a good interview, and from that you can you can try to find another way to visualize it, not to observe, but to make some other situations, to use archive footage, for example.
I actually have several questions, but first I would like to ask a question. So, my first one. I noticed you focus on middle-aged and older women as your as main protagonists, and usually they are forced to be invisible or not seen, not perceived to be important. If there's a reason behind this.
In general, I like to make films about women, and I find it maybe also because it's for example with Tanya. This film about Maidan, I was sure that I will, at the very beginning, I was sure that I will not make any film about Maidan. Why? Because it's so big, the topic is so big. How are you going to show this, How are you going to make any analysis if you don't know what is really happening, how it will be? But, and I by accident stepped into this boutique shop, Helen Marlen, where they would sell some super fancy shoes, clothes, whatever. And I saw Tanya, and she I was working with some foreign journalists. They were just collecting stories. I was helping them as a fixer, to translate. And and they asked several questions to Tanya, and you see that this is the character, It's how strong she is, how determined she is, how she is sure of her position. And I realized that I cannot just walk, walk by. And I asked her, "Can I come back? I would like to hear more of your stories." And she, okay. And then she somehow she acts very naturally, and I was very lucky to meet her because she was not even noticing. She's talking to me, talking to other people, and it's very it's like a lucky situation if you are able to find this person. Not everyone can be a character. Even people who survived very dramatic events, they just sometimes they're too lost, too shy, they're too conscious of the camera. And with the choir conductor, it was just that also I had some kind of sympathy with her. I was looking for because I was in Lisbon, and at the time I was looking for people with whom I can connect. So of course it's a migrant community, and there are a lot of working migrants from Ukraine in Portugal. And I noticed that there is this situation, you know, like mother and daughter. And it also comes from, you know, like from my personal story that I can relate to this, because I also, you know, like I'm studying abroad, my mom is there, my family is there, and how it is, how do you manage to, you know, so to say, to keep up the family if you are in the distance, and how do you manage this? So I have a, you know, like I'm a feminist by political views, and somehow I'm driven closer to women, but it doesn't, you know, but I'm not limiting myself also. So like if I find a very, you know, like it doesn't really matter, the gender doesn't matter. As long as the personality is strong, as long as the story is strong, this is what is important.
I have more questions, but maybe someone else.
I have a question about it seems like I don't know, was it a purpose that you were trying to make us like think about this? But clearly you compared religion with the like this communist ideology, and I think and I'm like, this is better. This was really, I don't know, weird for me and cringy to watch, because like
Jesus is watching.
Anyway, you were trying, like, what was your goal? You were trying to make people like think wider, or was it just like a provocative video? I'm just wondering, what were you looking for while you were doing the editing the way you were doing? And also the second question is this factory where they were melting Lenin and into, it seems like into church bells, was one factory, or there was just like editing of a few factories? Thank you.
Це як ображає чиїсь почуття Ліїні чи ні? Чи це...
No, not mine. I was just wondering.
Okay.
Тобто це було намагання показати, що не треба ламати Леніна, як колись більшовики ламали дзвони, чи показати, що все настільки постійно міняється, що то з них виплавляють, то воно і так може бути сприйнято.
I think the message I leave to you, to make up and to understand, because I think it's already, yes, this film is, I think it's already quite didactic, because it's like it has a structure which is 1, 2, 3, it follows, and then it comes to the end, and then it loops in a circle. So about this comparison. So this question I had to you, how the film was made. You know, sometimes when you watch a film, it seems maybe it's so easy, you know, like at the very beginning I had this idea, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then I sat down and, you know, and edited it in a nice way. But it took me 1 year to make this film, and it was not so easy, although it's only like 11 minutes. So I started with the idea that, you know, like, what is this documentation? It's so unclear, so the people are divided. Some wanted to keep it, some wanted to destroy it. Others are not sure what to do with all these Soviet things that are left in Ukraine. And so my initial idea, and this is how I was pitching this project, that I will show this contrast of opinion. I will have a nostalgia for the Soviet Union. I found a character who is collecting Lenin monuments at his backyard. And I had the person in a village that they wanted to get rid, like the Golova сільської ради, the mayor of the village, and they wanted to get rid of the Lenin, drowning it in the river. And I said, okay, so this is my conflict. This is, you know, like two opinions that I could build up, and then I would, you know, and I would stay neutral in this thing. So there's this and this, and then you decide, and you can analyze these opinions. But then. So I actually did this job, which I was planning. I shot with both of the characters at both of these locations, and then I realized that it's not really working. It's not really how I feel this topic. So I started to research, and I read a lot of articles. sociological, politological articles about everything, like about mausoleum in Moscow, how people were, what was the opinion of people towards it. For example, and somehow always in these articles, this idea of idol came up. And I was thinking that since we are living in Eastern Europe, it's mainly Christian culture, and we have this, we have this background, and we understand what this idol. Today is this idol, tomorrow is another idol, and so I was trying to compare. And actually, it's not, this is how it was. When the Bolsheviks came to power, they destroyed all the churches, and they put. Although they said that religion is prohibited, there is no religion, but they put another thing, which we can consider as a communist Christ, so to say, And then, when the Soviet Union broke down, again there was a boom of religion, all kind of different. This and that, all kind of different Christian religions rose up in Ukraine. Churches were built, and this continues. Of course, it's very political. It's very monetary question, and so I had this idea to try to connect, to make this cycle of idols in nature, so to say. That, and of course, because we all can here, we can relate to both Lenin and to both Christ, I thought it would be a good twist to make this comparison. About the bell. So I had this idea that I collected the postcards from different cities, and like whenever you go to any city, there would be like the a collection of postcards, the most prominent places in the city, and there was always Lenin, because Lenin was put in the main square of the city. So the prospect of Lenin, the square of Lenin, and the monument of Lenin. So it was quite easy to find. And I was traveling to almost all cities in Ukraine, just trying to see what happened to how the city landscape changed, what you see in the credits. And then I wanted to find out what actually happened to the monuments themselves, because the demolition of monuments was quite a public process. Like there was a crowd, everyone was watching, but no one really knew what happened to the monuments after. And so I was trying to find out where did they all go. And when I came to Poltava, I read an article that they want to make a bell from monument. And I said, well, great, thank you. So this is how it will be. I will find this Lenin. I will film how they will melt it into the bell. And I went to the mayor of the city, I went to the main architect of the city, I went to people who are dealing with the monuments and parks in the city, and no one knew where the Lenin is. Why? Because it's made of bronze, and it's 5-6 tons of bronze, and of course, well, I think someone made money on the monument. But that okay, it's not going to happen, but I need to find a solution, and it will be, very good closing or like a cycle of this. So actually, I made it happen. I found the factory where they are making bells, and I actually asked them, and they said that they had several offers like this. Some people were calling them and asking, we want to melt Lenin and to make the bells, but they were not sure when it's going to happen. So I waited and waited and waited, like for 3-4 months. And then I said, okay, the film needs to be done. So I bought the bust of Lenin, and I melted it. I didn't melt it, but in the factory they melted it for me, and I made the people dream come true in Poltava, and it's not unrealistic. It's some my involvement into reality, but it's sort of like it helps for the film, but it's also is based on a true story, so to say. So don't be afraid of, to make some things happen if it works for your film.
footage only, except at the end when you compared the postcards with the new statues. I really liked all of the films, and I'd like to compliment the editing in the last one, especially when you use the postcards. And I'm very interested in like after the collapse of the Soviet Union, how the post-Soviet countries like did the nation building. And I myself was born in Turkmenistan, and I experienced something similar to that, because after the statues of Lenin were removed, they replaced them with other statues of the dictator. And it was like the different visuals you had. You had just something else. They tried to find something to build a nation on. So you would have, as I mentioned before, the golden statues of the dictator, or you would have, they wrote a book that basically told the past of the history of the country, and used folklore again, what was actually used during the time of the Soviet Union as well, folklore. And it's kind of like a repetition. So I came here to learn more about the Ukrainian history, and I would be interested what they used, or if they used something to build a nation. It's just,
Since it's in Ukraine, it's quite recent story. Like the law, which so-called the decommunization laws, were adopted in 2015. So, and these laws, according to these laws, the usage of communist symbols was banned, and they had to be replaced, removed, whatever. And there is 1 year to do this. So every city, every little village, they have to manage with this problem themselves. And it's still, for the most part of Ukraine, because in the West Ukraine, where you see the monuments of this Danilo Galitsky, the king on a horse, it happened in 90s, in the beginning of the 90s. They somehow managed to do it faster. But for the majority of Ukraine, it's very recent, and still there is a big question what to do. And then I will tell you that the most, there are like three, as I was traveling, I discovered three most common projects, how they envisioned. First, it's Taras Shevchenko. Taras Shevchenko is our main writer, you know, like some kind of uncriticized authority. You know, like he lived 200 years ago, and what can you say? Like he is, you know, the best.
Can you say his name again?
Taras Shevchenko. Like Pushkin, like, I don't know, like Goethe, whatever, you know, like some prototype which everyone should like and everyone should respect, and you don't have a political question, so to say, which I think is very simple. I think the second most popular idea is to make the monument dedicated to Maidan, to people who died on Maidan and went to war. And the third is to make a fountain. You know, it was also very interesting. You know, like the water energy which should purify, cleanse this place. Yeah, but it's still under question, and for most part, it's still there. You can see these empty pedestals, which also, like, it's, you know, like if you have clothes and you have a hole, the hole is much more visible, you know, than what it was before. You know, like no one really like paid attention to Lenin, but now since it's empty, like it's what to do. Yes, please ask a question, but also let's talk about other films so that we analyze them as well.
Yeah, thank you for the movies, also especially the third one. I really felt it. I think it's a movie that you rather feel. And my question is quite personal. It's about endurance. Like, how do you manage to stay a long time with one subject and with one character? Like, when do you decide to shoot? How much time do you spend with them? And do you ever get bored, or how do you maintain this?
It all depends on the topic and also like on the motivation. But I'm very interested in what I do, and I don't really do things just because I must, but rather because I'm interested. So for me, it's quite easy. The other thing is to keep the relations with the characters. It's quite difficult, and to also like to build a story. For example, if we talk about the film about Maidan, about the doctor. Also, the idea was like this. It was the end of the revolution. So I had this idea that we would make a post-revolution film. And I chose her as a doctor that it's some kind of, by default, it's a pacifist figure. And she heals, you know, like she helps people to get better. So I thought, okay, I have this sort of this metaphoric character who would heal people, and we observe how Ukraine also heals, how everything gets to, you know, to normal. And so this was the basic idea. And then when during the first days of shooting, it turned out that all these news were coming, that what is going to happen. The Russian troops are coming closer to the borders. And then I realized that my film is not going to work, so I just need to follow. And I didn't know, like no one of us knew what will be, how long will it last, and what would be the resolution. So I just started to film Tanya every day, how the life evolves. It was for about 2 months. Almost every day. Sometimes when nothing was happening, I would go like film around Maidan, some shots. I would, you know, do some other things. Sometimes we would just talk with Tanya, just you know, like to get closer. I was buying a lot of cigarettes for her. She's a heavy smoker. Yeah, but and then you know, like how, and then we were in this like a limbo situation when you don't know what is going to happen, when is going to something change, and you need to start to think, start to structure in your head how the film will be. You know, like what, when is gonna be the end? Okay, like I was also getting a bit tired of shooting all this and all this stress. And then I had this. It's like I share with you because it's a stressful situation. But I had a very cynical thought in my head that just like imagining the end of the film. I said, oh, okay, it would be good like if she goes like for the film. It would be good if she goes to the war zone. It would be like a good ending for the film. And when I was thinking, I realized that there's these crazy thoughts. I mean, it's like very disrespectful, and it's like, I was torturing myself because I had this thought, but I had this thought, and unfortunately, this is how it happened. It's good for the film, but of course, it's not good for anyone. So, in this kind of observational films, it's you need to think what situations, how you structure the film, what situation could be in the beginning, which could be at the end. For example, also I started shooting when she was in the hospital. And imagine if I put the first shots in the film that she's in the hospital, what kind of impression we get from her? That she is a weak person, like she is weak, she's suffering some kind of illnesses, some kind of troubles, and it's not building her up as like a revolutionary hero. So I had these shots and this sequence, and I knew that it's not good to put it in the beginning, so I will put it somewhere, maybe I don't use it at all, or I put it in some other place, if it helps the story or not. So you need to distinguish. There is life with all the hardships. There are people with whom you need to be, you need to be with good relations, and you need to respect them. But there is also a film which has also to work, because sometimes you have to be hard. Sometimes you have to be hard in your decisions, in your editing decision, in your thinking, so that the film works. But if you don't feel that you can do it, maybe better not to do it, or maybe do some, this National Geographic films or something, so that or take other topics when you don't need to be so like a surgeon,
Do you stay in contact? Do you stay in contact?
Yes, of course. So, I have one more question. Yes, I was asked about how Tanya is now. So, yes, of course, we keep contact, and I also keep contact with Oksana, the choir conductor. And it's also like, it's your responsibility. If you choose to make film with people, it's your responsibility to, you know, like to be a human, to be their friend or not, but to somehow to keep up if they need help, to help them. So Tanya, now she's at home. She had a very she went in May 2015 to the front line. She stayed there for about 2 years. She was kept as a hostage for 2 weeks. It was the hardest time because no one could contact her. I was trying to call like her mom. Everyone was getting crazy, but somehow they managed to release her. She also suffered strong severe contusion, I don't know, like so with this breaking wave that, you know, you get hit away. Anyway, so her health suffered really bad. She had some problems with sleeping, with her head. But she's alive. She's home, and she's now safe. And her mom feels good that she's home.
Yeah, as you already mentioned, you have a quite observational approach to documentaries, especially the first 2 ones. But I have the feeling that there are moments when you kind of break that moment through using kind of poetic interview situations. You know, when Tanya goes to bed, I had the feeling she reads from her diary or something. And the first sequences of the first year together, I don't know who's talking then, and how did you like put it together? Because I had the feeling it's definitely not like one-to-one translated from the interview into the movie.
Yes. Yes. So, yes, like there are several styles in documentary, and we will discuss them later. And but I think all styles are not so clear, so clean, you know. And it's hard to keep it clean only if you decide. Okay, like if you make a strong decision and you make limitations to yourself. I will not use interviews. I will not even think about them. I will not even do them or anything. Just a clear observation, and whatever happens. But sometimes, like, you need some narration to make a story more understandable. For example, let's take the first film. In the beginning, so this is the voice of the woman, Oksana. She's telling about her life, how she got to Portugal. She says that I came here just to get some money for my children. I didn't know that I would stay. And this sets the story. It gives, like, it's very minimalistic, but it gives already who is she, what is like, what's her quest, so to say, and what is this film about. Because if I leave, if, for example, I would leave these shots without any text, there is a train, there is the ocean, and some woman goes somewhere. It wouldn't be understood. If this film would be longer, and there will be more situations when, for example, in the house where she was cleaning, when she was doing the laundry, for example, if there would be like the people who live in the house, like, you know, like her bosses, and maybe within observation she could say something, oh, you know, like you need to do this and this and this. This would give the context. But sometimes it, you know, it takes a lot of time to wait for such situation, and it's just like it's a practical decision to make it, pum, pum, pum. So this is where she is, this is what is happening, this is the situation. Another, yes, for this...
yeah.
Is
it from an interview situation? What did you give her a text and she read? Because
It's an interview.
Okay.
But also you can feel that she's kind of like a poetic person, no? Like, because like the way she said, it's not like, I came in Portugal in 2001, you know? Da, 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 da. And also like but also of course it's not that the first day I met with her and she's telling me this story. It takes time, you know, like you do things together, you talk about life, you talk about everything. And then when you feel that the person is, you know, could be sincere, could be open and not censor herself, you do this interview and it, you know, like you don't, and you talk usually like you would talk with a friend and not like, so tell me, you know. And then the person just opens up, tries to, you know, to make it to talk the way she talks. And also it's thanks to Oksana herself, because this is how she is. You know, she's an artist. She's a choir conductor. She likes music and everything. And it's and also because of this, because of the way she talks, you can see this big contrast of the work that she has to do there. And her personality, that she says that, you know, sometimes in life we must do work which we hate the most just because to survive. The situation with Tanya when she was going to bed, it was also from an interview, maybe like it was also observational, but we were talking and because I spent many nights with her there. So this is like the second floor of the this boutique. And these shelves were used to store the boxes of shoes. And they just removed them and they made these improvised beds to sleep there. And this is not exactly when she was telling me these words, maybe some other night, but whatever, you know, like I thought it worked and it gives this, you know, it gives the feeling that she is very stressed because she cannot fall asleep, but also like what is gonna happen, you know, like there is the gun on the wall, it will shoot. So she's kind of giving this thought that what will be Russians from this side, these are from this side, what will be. So I thought to use it. So it's, yes, it's not clearly observational, but also not clearly this mode when you have a strong narration, you know, the voice of God who instructs you about the story.